What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back for another episode of Poker Hands. And today we're going to be taking a look at a hand that was played from live at the bike between myself and Matt Berkey. It's a pretty good hand. I think you're going to enjoy this one, so let's jump right into it.
Tend to show up here. So Matt sizes up here with the bigger pre-flop raise.
Yeah, this is pretty standard from Berkey. He uses large pre-flop open size.
This is a double straddle, by the way. This is
Okay,
Ryan Fee
okay.
likes to exercise the double straddle option when possible, and so that's what he did here. And so it's a 5x raise from Berkey.
Yeah, I mean 5x is going to be his standard in a straddle or non-straddle pot, no matter what. So I'm not surprised to see a 5x here. And Doug's going to defend the button here with 9-8 of spades.
Our hand begins at 5,100, 200, with Matt Berkey raising under the gun to 1,000. Now, this is maybe a bit bigger than I would like to typically open to, but it's still a fine play. It's just if you do raise this size, you have to be a bit tighter pre-flop. The reason is because you're not going to be able to profitably bluff with a hand like 7-5 suited or maybe even 7-6 suited if you go this large. You simply get too much action, and your bet size to take the pot down is, very large, so you're going to have to use less of these suited connector kind of bluffs. We'll get to that later, but it's an important note. To the button with 9-8 suited, I think in general I prefer a 3-bet. I don't mind mixing in a flat some of the time as well. If we were at shorter stack size, I think I can get behind even a fold facing this big of a raise. But particularly when we're this deep, I like playing my hand in position here. You can put people in some really difficult spots post-flop. And the value position increases as stack sizes increase as well. So we do decide to flat. Everyone else gets out of the way, and we're ready to take a heads-up flop. And we do get some action.
I have never had
for sure.
An ace-7-7. Doug with the backdoor straight draw flush draw. Berkey with one of the best flops he's going to get here.
For sure. Pot's 2,500, and Berkey's going to choose to bet here.
1,500.
And it's interesting because, Berkey talked to a lot when he was in the booth of how he's not a fan of the down bet, but most of these players at this table in this spot, but raising, and then being the aggressor, and then this board texture are going to down bet a lot, right? But Berkey goes for the over half pot bet.
Yeah, I mean,
Doug.
And look at this. It actually, maybe because of that sizing, it gets Doug to spaz a little bit and raise, which you probably shouldn't have that many raises on this flop.
yeah, I think he's going to, Doug's very calculated in his decisions and blockers and the hands he chooses to bluff.
The flop comes ace-7-7 rainbow. Berkey flops top pair, top kicker. And I flop not really that much, but maybe a few backdoor draws. This is where Berkey makes a decision that I'm not a big fan of. He sizes it at 1,500 into a pot of 2,500 on this board. I don't really think that bet size makes too much sense. On a board that's very dry, like an ace-high paired board, you typically want to use smaller bet sizes. In fact, on paired boards in general, you want to use smaller bet sizes because most hands miss on paired flops, and if your opponent doesn't have anything, they're going to have to let go of most of their hands. So by using a size more like, let's just say 600 or 700 here, you really attack a large portion of the defender's range, whereas if you go for a big bet, they can safely fold a lot of hands like queen jack or pocket fours and not really have to worry about it because they don't have to defend with very many hands. Now, I don't use the small bet as much as many players do, and on certain boards, I think it's much worse. But on this board specifically, I really do like a small bet size. Now, this is where things start to get kind of interesting. I know I don't have very much on the flop here. I have only 9 high, but my hand's kind of cool. I do have a backdoor flush draw. Obviously, I turn spade, I'll have a flush draw. I can turn open-ender on a 6 or a 10, so I have some good playability. And then there's also some interesting removal effects at play as well. My opponent cannot have 9-7 of spades or 8-7 of spades. And you might think, oh, wow, 2 hands they can't have, Doug, huge blockers. But it's actually pretty important. If I raise this flop and barrel the turn and bet the river, I'm saying that I have a 7. Now, if my opponent can't have 9-7 of spades or 8-7 of spades, he also can't have 9-7 of clubs or 8-7 of clubs because there's a club on the board. And he can't have 9-7 of diamonds or 8-7 of diamonds because the 7 of diamonds is on the board. So he can only have 9-7 or 8-7 of the 9-7 and 8-7 combos. Now, he could maybe have 7-6 or 7-5, but this is where my pre-flop comment makes more sense. he might be able to have those here, but those hands will not be profitable opens when he raises this big. So it should narrow down the amount of sevens that he has fairly substantially. I also think if he had a really strong hand like aces or ace-7, he might be more inclined to check on the flop and try and trap me, but he also might bet. But this is also kind of where that bet size doesn't make too much sense to me. If you bet huge and you have ace-7, what do you hope I have, right? It's much less likely I have anything to go with. And it's another reason why I like that small size. Anyway, so going back to my hand here, we want to raise some bluffs here on the flop. We're going to have hands like 8-7 suited or 9-7 suited. Again, right around the edge of what we're going to play pre-flop. We could have ace-7 from time to time. I again would probably lean towards calling that a bit more than raising for some of the same reasons why I'd like a check on the flop in Berkey's shoes. But we can definitely have 9-7 suited, 8-7 suited as some value bets. And I honestly wouldn't hate even raising a hand like pocket sevens, where my opponent can definitely have an ace, or maybe even the beautiful cooler aces against sevens, and you get the whole stack. So we want to work some bluffs in. We have some value bets. What are the best bluffs? Well, maybe a hand like 9-8 of spades, backdoor flush draw, good removal. I actually can't think of many bluffs that are better. I mean, maybe 8-6 of spades, although we're getting into territory I might not play pre-flop, and he might not open. Anyway, long-winded, but I think this is one of our better candidates. And I'm also going to be raising with some hands like 10-8 suited or 10-9 suited that also have some of those same removal effects and backdoor equity. Okay, enough said. I raised to 4,200 back over to Berkey. Now with ace-king, crystal clear call. What's a bit weird is because he bet so big, he could maybe fold a few hands that he wouldn't normally have to fold. But if you bet an ace on an ace-high paired board and you get raised, especially when it's a smaller size like this bet, you're going to have to go ahead and choose to call. Because if you don't call with all your aces, the button can start to bluff you a bunch. And really, if he folds very much when I raise here, I'm getting a pretty good price on it. I'm not even raising to 3 times his bet size. So I like his decision to call. And let's take a turn.
Some of the sevens is pretty natural, I think, for him.
But Berkey knows that, you know, he's basically saying I have a 7, and that's all he's losing to here.
Right, of course. Turn does make Doug a pair, so
Will he check back here?
I'm curious to see if he's going to choose to check back. When Berkey does call the flop, though, 9 shouldn't necessarily have too much showdown value.
But as played, wouldn't Berkey call that flop with a hand like queens anyway? Just because it doesn't make sense to raise that flop?
Correct, that's what I'm saying. The 9 doesn't necessarily have too much showdown value.
Yeah, exactly.
But it'll get like progressive.
Doug with the overbet, 14,200.
I mean, at this point, he's saying I have 7-8 suited, and that's almost all he's saying, right?
Correct.
He almost has that. Maybe he misread his hand.
So you said Doug's only saying he has 7-8 suited here?
Well, this line, what other hand makes sense here?
Could have 7-6 suited.
A 7 in general?
Yeah, but I'm saying there's not, well, my point is there's not many 7s that you're going to have when you flat and open on the button there.
Right, for sure.
You're going to have 7-8 suited, 7-6 suited.
Gonna have 9-7, 7-10.
Right, he's repping exactly
I
the
mean,
7.
is he going to flat that hand very often on the button there? I don't know. 5x raise? I mean, not very
Straddle
often.
on 2. He's at the button. They are $100,000 deep as well, so he might be playing a little bit wider range from the button.
The most likely hand that he's saying he has is 7-8 suited or 7-6 suited.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Yeah, he
A7?
definitely has a lot of 7s in his range. He's representing a 7 is what you're trying to say, for sure.
Yes.
So he's going to choose to overbet this turn here. That's a tough decision for Berkey.
Like, Doug's not doing this with ace-king, is my point.
Good point.
So the overbet on the turn, 14 into 11. And
Doesn't look like it's going to work here.
now when Berkey calls here, Doug knows he pretty much has ace-king, ace-queen here, right?
The turn comes a 9 of clubs, and Berkey checks over to me, and this is where things get pretty interesting. Now, my 9 isn't very relevant in that I never have a better hand than Berkey now. I don't think he's bet calling king-queen, maybe backdoor flush draw every once in a while, but in general, I'm still behind with my hand against what Berkey's range is, against pretty much all of his holdings. So when I turn the 9, the question becomes what hands make the most sense to bluff multiple streets? And I actually thought about it in the hand that I would want to sometimes bet 9-8 here and sometimes check. If you always bet 9-8 and then you're going to bomb the river, then realistically, you're going to just have too many bluffs, particularly if you have a hand like, let's just say 8-6 suited that raise the flop, or 10-8 suited, or maybe even 10-9 suited. You're just going to have too many holdings that are bluffing. However, it's also worth noting that 9-8 of spades is the best hand to raise the flop with, because 9-8 of hearts, while it does block the same amount of good hands as 9-8 of spades, does not have the backdoor flush draw. So I'd be more likely to raise hands like 10-8 of spades, 8-6 of spades, 9-8 of spades than I would be to raise the hearts, or than I would be to raise the clubs or diamonds. So the question becomes, how often do we bet? And we have 8-7 suited for sure. We're going to have 9-7 suited for sure. We might have 7-6 suited in our flat range from time to time. And then once in a while, we'll have Ace-7 or 7. So we can definitely pick around like 4 or 5 combos that we want to be bluffing with. And I think 9-8 of spades should mainly be in that range. Now, at the time of the hand, I decided I would be checking this hand some of the time. I think in retrospect, I don't like almost ever checking this hand because not only does it make a lot of sense as a bluff within all of the hands we can have, but then also it has equity against a 7 and obviously an equity against an ace. But then additionally, you block Ace-9 or 9-9 that maybe could have bet called the flop. So you block more of the full houses that your opponent can have. And the good thing on the river here is we don't have a club. You don't really want to take this line with like a 10-8 of clubs. You wouldn't want to raise flop, bet turn, bet river. You might want to raise flop, bet the turn with 10-8 of clubs. But on the river now, your opponent can't have like Ace-10 of clubs or Ace-8 of clubs, hands that would probably fold the river. So you don't want to block those same draws. So I think this is the kind of spot where if you're going to bet, you're repping a 7, you got to go big, your opponent's unlikely to have a 7, and if you're going to fire the turn with a hand like 9-8 of spades, you got to be thinking about that river barrel as well. I decided to go ahead and fire 14.2 thousand here on the turn overbet. We're setting up for some serious fireworks on the river. Now, in Berkey's shoes with Ace-King, kind of an interesting spot. I actually think a hand that would be kind of an undervalued good call hand would be a hand like, let's just say Ace-8 of hearts, where I can't have 8-7 of hearts in my range anymore. I just simply don't have as much value. And I'm unlikely to be bluffing with 8 of hearts as well, or at least less likely. So that hand will be a really nice call. Now, you don't have enough hands to just call Ace-8 of hearts and a 7, right? You don't have many 7s pre. You're only going to have Ace-7 of hearts as far as like your boats go, and then aces. You might be checking that in the flop sometimes. So you're going to simply have to call with some hands that you might not want to. And if all else fails, this is a good tip for you guys. Let's say in this spot, all else fails. You don't know what's going on, and you realize you don't have a 7 much. What you can do is take your worst aces on the turn, fold them. Take your middling aces and call them on the turn to fold them on the river, and take your best aces and call them down. So maybe you take a hand like Ace-5 suited or Ace-10, fold it on the turn. Maybe you take a hand like Ace-Jack or Ace-Queen, and you fold it on the river. And then you take a hand like Ace-King, and you let them know what's up, and you put your foot firmly on the brake, and we're going to see what they have at showdown. Now, going into the river here, I know what I have to do. It's not fun. I'm not happy about it. And Berkey's not exactly known for folding. In fact, Berkey calls where no one else would consider it. But I know what I have to do. I didn't come this far to give up on the river. Sometimes you just gotta take your courage and stand up and say,
A large amount of the time.
holy shit, that's a full house.
Large amount of the time.
Oh my god.
What a life. When you run good, you run good.
Holy moly guacamole. Wow.
Welcome to the life of Doug Polk.
I was gonna say he had a backdoor full house draw on the flop, but now the sizing, I mean, there is some chance Berkey could have a 7 himself as well. Doug just kind of blocks some of those combos, so Berkey's pre-flop selection is a little bit out of line, but I don't think it adds in that many 7s. So.
And Doug looks like he's gonna bet 30,500.
30,500.
Wow.
Let's see what Berkey says here, if he can talk to Doug at all.
Tough spot for Berk here.
Doug acted fairly quickly in the river.
All right, so the river gives us a full house. Berkey checks it over to us, and now I'm thinking about Value Town, but we got to think about what size makes sense. Let's say that I had a 7 here. Well, I wouldn't want to be going all in this situation because then my opponent can continue more often with just 7s or aces or ace 9 or ace 7, all hands that either chop or have me beat. So we have to pick a size that makes sense given the texture of this board. And I think a smaller bet size, more like 3/4 pot, does the job. Now, you might want to argue against people that you think call more often. You should go for that big size. But when the board shifts in a way where I would want to bet certain sizes of my value hands, I want to bet certain sizes with my bluffs, I try and pick the size that makes the most sense of my total strategy. In this spot, that's 3/4 pot. Now, you might argue that, Doug, there's a good reason to go huge, put them all in, all this stuff. I think that's a fine size too. But in general, when the board double pairs, I try to be a little bit more on the smaller side of what size I choose than, let's just say, certain other runouts like flushes or straights. Anyway, we bet 30.5 thousand. Action back over to Berkey. Can he make the hero read and let this one go?
Can Berkey get away from this hand? Looks like he's leaning towards making the fold.
Berkey calls here. It's a 100K pot.
Doug with the Tom Dwan impression, mouth open, staring at the board.
The head bob.
I've seen this look from Berkey one too many times.
9.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow,
Berkey
does call.
makes the call. $100,000 pot for Doug Polk.
Wow.
Goes runner, full house to clip Matt Berkey. What a start in this game for Doug Polk.
Damn, Berkey, you didn't get away from that. I thought we were what was it, your place or your house or something? What was the expression again?
That's the toughest lineup I'll ever played in my life, and I felt right at home. Moreover, I felt like they were in my backyard, not the other way around. Would I have a chance in hell in a 6-max game online against that crew? No, not even remotely. Do I think I have an edge in a live realm, 300 blinds deep, effective? Fuck yes. I happily played this lineup.
Oh, I gotcha. You know what makes me feel like I'm in my backyard? Being in my backyard. Thanks, where you at?
Wow, $100,000 goes to Doug Polk. Welcome to Doug Polk Week.
It's almost over, right? Just because we're getting crushed there.
Christian not happy.
Nah, I mean, you know, really good pop for Doug there. And, you know, really tough spot for Berkey. I mean, it's just one of those spots where, you know, you're at the top of your range, and given the line thus far, you didn't